Yo, what is good everybody? It's your boy Tej, and in this video I'll be showing y'all how to make a beat for Lil Baby, and specifically the type of beat that has a vocal sample and a piano melody similar to his new single In a Minute. And I made the entire beat from scratch, so I'm gonna be showing y'all my whole process of making the sample and adding drums to it. If you're new to the channel and you like these types of videos, be sure to hit subscribe. As always, I'll have the finished beat played at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. And with all that out of the way, let's just hop right into the beat. Per usual, before I break anything down, I'll show you all a quick preview of the final sample. So the tempo that we're working with is 169 beats per minute. I found that like the 150 to 170 range worked the best for these type of beats. So starting off with the piano melodies, I got this rich ballad grand piano preset from Keyscape. I opened up the MIDI and I only really laid out 4 chords. The key that I used for the sample was D sharp minor. So my first chord is D sharp minor, just a basic triad. So using the first, third, and fifth note of the scale. And then next I use the A sharp minor triad with an octave note on the A sharp. And then I have a B major chord and then a C sharp major, which leads back into the original D sharp minor triad. So overall I kept the bass melody for the piano pretty simple. It's just those 4 chords. The only difference is that in the second half of the pattern, I just dropped this A sharp down to a G sharp, making this an A sharp minor 7. And then I copied this G sharp down an octave. And then after I'd done that, I selected all the notes and then hit Alt S on my keyboard. And then this strumizer tool popped up. I just adjusted the knobs similar to this. And then that's what gives me the strumming effect that I had with my chords. And then I wanted my notes to be a little bit randomized. So I hit Alt R on my keyboard and just adjusted this velocity knob right here. So I routed that to a mixer track and I put this EQ on it. I have a slight low cut on it to cut out some of the key noises and just cutting out some of the harshness in the low mids. And for my next sound, I cloned that same Keyscape preset into a new channel and then I laid out the bass notes. And again, these are pretty basic. I'm just copying the root notes of all the chords and just putting them down a few octaves. And then I also copied these down an octave and reduced them in velocity. This is just to give the bass notes a little bit more depth to them and make them stand out a little more in the final mix. For effects on that, I put a steep low cut on it to cut out some of the really low like sub frequencies so I could leave room for my sub bass. Next, I opened up Omnisphere and I got this PRS lead guitar preset. And then I put in this guitar pattern. This was meant to be like a top or a counter melody to what we already have with the piano. I originally played this in with my MIDI keyboard and then just went in and manually quantized and adjusted the notes. So again, a pretty straightforward pattern. And to make the guitar pattern as a whole sound a little more realistic, what I ended up doing is I went in and I manually adjusted the velocity for all the notes. Also what I did in the plugin menu is I went to this wrench tool right here and went to the shift knob under the time and adjusted it accordingly. As for effects on the guitar, I put this EQ on it to cut out some of the picking noises and just some more harsh noises in the mids. And then I put on a fruity reverb. I believe this is the Hall preset, but I adjusted the cut knobs, the decay, and these dry and wet knobs over here. So then I exported all of those stems as individual wave files. So how I did that is I went to the mixer here and I went to each of the mixer sounds that I ended up using. I armed each of the tracks by highlighting these red dots and then hitting Alt R on my keyboard and then hitting start. By the way, you want to do this in pattern mode so you don't end up rendering out a 3-minute stem. As for manipulation of those stems, the only thing I did was copy the guitar over and just make it unique. And then in the new sample, I pitched it down by 1 octave. I used it interchangeably throughout the loop just to add an extra layer, and I just thought it paired better with the vocal in certain parts. So now for the vocal, I grabbed this vocal loop from, I believe it was a CJ Vegas pack, and the original sample sounds like this. So that wasn't in the correct key or the tempo, so I ended up stretching it to the correct tempo, and in the audio clip menu, I pitched it up by 600 cents to move the sample up to D sharp minor. After I pitched it up and chopped up the sample, this is what it sounds like. For effects on the vocal, I put on RC20 on the Lush and Crunch guitar preset and adjusted some of the knobs. And then I also put a limiter on it and just put the ceiling down to what was about the average volume of it, because there was a lot of vocal inflections. I wanted the overall dynamic of the vocal to be fairly constant throughout. I think traditionally producers would use a compressor, but for me, a limiter is just easier to use because I can visualize how loud the dynamics are. So as you can see in the limiter, it's a lot easier to visualize just what's going on. I could probably use something else like a multi-band compressor, but this is just the strategy that I use. Once I had rendered out the vocal sample as an audio clip, I again did the same thing that I did with the guitar, where I duplicated it, made it unique as sample, and pitched it down by an octave. And then the final touch that I put on the sample was a sub bass, and it was this one right here. And I practically just copied the notes from the bass piano pattern, and the only difference that I made is I just moved this A sharp to an F sharp in the second half of the pattern. So once I had all that, I arranged the loop as such, and I rendered it out as a WAV file. So I took that WAV file and I imported that into a new FLP. I arranged the stems, added the drums, and pretty much finished the rest of the beat. And also all the drum sounds that I used were from my introspection drum kit, which is free. I'll leave a link to it in the description. So starting off with the clap. Overall, I kept a pretty straightforward clap pattern. It's just the standard third beat of every measure. And then for all the even measures, I put a clap on the end of one. Next, I added my hi-hat. So for this pattern, I didn't really want to do something like a two-step because that would have just been too crowded with all the stuff that I had. I went in manually and just by penciling notes in and kind of give the rest of the track enough space to do its thing. I tried to use the hi-hats somewhat sparingly, and I also adjusted the velocities quite a bit. You can see a lot of the notes are significantly lower in velocities than some of the others, but in terms of complexity, it's fairly simple overall. I believe all the rolls are using the 1/2 step snap setting. For those hi-hats, I put some effect tricks on it. It's just this one reverb note. Next, I added my snare, and again, keeping the same theme with all the drums, keep it real simple. I just have the snare hitting on the offbeat for the 3rd and 7th measures, and then for the 2nd and 6th, I have it hitting on the and of the 2nd beat. And then my 2 rolls, again, are fairly straightforward, just using the 1/2 step snapping, and constructed a couple rolls using that. Next, I added my open hat. I'm not even going to say what the theme was for this one. I think you've already figured it out. And lastly, to round it out real nice, we have the 808. I'm just following those same bass notes in the sub bass and the piano bass note pattern, of course adjusted for the key. I used the typical spots where an 808 would hit in these type of beats or trap beats in general. I think the only real switch up that I have is just the B notes here with the octave and just where they'd hit differently. So that's all I got. Hope you all enjoyed the video and you found it helpful and were able to take something away from it. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit subscribe. Let me know any other video ideas you have for me in the comments below, and any feedback is also welcome. And that's going to do it for me. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.